last year, this spooky content didn't go over so well on my channel. So this year, I'm going to make sure to include a true crime video every single week. So you will have your regular content. Everything else will be a little on the spooky side. I tried not to go spooky this year, because it seemed like those got the lowest amount of views last year. But I encourage you to please email me your spooky stories. My email is in the description box down below, so that I can compile them all and do a video for later in the month. I really want to do that. I quite enjoy some of the other content creators like GeekwaresASMR when she does those videos, and I would love to make them something that we did quite a bit more often, but I know what you guys are really here for, and it's the true crime. So tonight I'm going to tell you, I'm going to read you an article that I found on a website called Thought Catalog. I'm not sure if I'm going to read you all of it, but I'm going to link it down below, and I'm just going to get right into it. This article is called 32 People Who Were Saved from Death by a Creepy Gut Feeling by Emily Madringa. And it reads like this. I was almost kidnapped once. I was like 23 or so. I was walking down my street a little after dusk. I saw a van approaching a little ahead with no lights on. I didn't think much of it due to the time of day. The van slowed and was almost creeping along as I was approaching this part of the sidewalk, which had a tall, solid wall fence to the community. This gave me some pause in that quick moment. For me to keep walking, I would have to go between the wall and the van. In the little time it took me to take a couple of steps, and the van was getting close, I noticed that the side door was slowly sliding open. The one thought in my mind was, why isn't the light turning on inside the van? When you open the door of a vehicle, the light should come on inside, unless you deliberately switch it off. And I just ran into the median. I ran in front of the van and across the street, because if they're going to have some use of roadkill me, I've had it, but they're not getting me in one glorious piece. Immediately, the van took off like someone lit it on fire, from a slow crawl to full speed, and as I looked after it to see the plates, I noticed it had no plates, and still no lights. I called the police, of course. They sent cars out, but didn't find the van. I never had anything like this happen again, and I'm just an ordinary person. I don't suspect it was targeted. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The next one is called Trust Your Intuition. Always hated the dad scout leader in my area growing up. He just seemed like a real creep. I hated seeing him at community events, soccer games, back-to-school nights, etc. 10-year-old me staged a hissy fit to end all meltdowns with me slamming doors, crying, and breaking stuff to avoid being moved from Cub Scouts where the moms ran things, to avoid Boy Scouts. Turns out the scout leader was molesting 3 or 4 of the boys in the troop and threatening to kill them if they ever spoke. Justice found him and he's in prison. Creep. The next one is titled, My Gut Told Me Not To. I was driving a friend home late at night when I was around 12. She lived in a pretty rural area outside of San Geekwares, Missouri. Oh hey, me too. And about a quarter-mile from our house was an old abandoned farm and farmhouse. I always thought of this place as non-threatening, as she told me that she and her two sisters would go there as kids. They found an attic full of cool things, including a trunk of vintage women's clothing and old love letters, like something out of a movie. I would love that. Anyway, I am driving her home, and it's a hot, humid Missouri summer, with the windows open as the late night had offered some cool air. We were also singing at the tops of our lungs. We pass the abandoned farm, and I drop her off at her house. I wait long enough to see if she makes it inside and head back out the way I came. Driving along, and I get almost to where the farm is, and I see two things in the road. My danger meter goes off as I had just driven this road, and there was nothing there. I put the windows up and make sure the doors are locked. I get closer and realize that the items are 2 car batteries spaced out in the road, which is basically a 1-lane road, in a way that I would have to get out and move them to drive on the road. Holy cow. I immediately knew I wasn't getting out of the car, so I picked the side of the road that had the smaller ditch, and I gunned it. I was driving an SUV, and I remember feeling the car run over branches and things in the ditch, but I just gunned it and got out of there. All the way home, I felt creeped out, and I kept checking my rearview mirror. I called my friend the next morning and told her what had happened, and we both agreed it was weird. I agreed too. Shortly after that, I moved to another state and didn't think much of it. Fast forward 2 to 3 years later, I was back visiting my friend in my hometown. I randomly run into my old friend, and she runs up to me with wide eyes and grabs my arm. She asks me if I remember what I told her that night, and I said yes, and she proceeds to tell me that not too long ago, her family was awakened in the middle of the night by someone pounding on their sliding glass door. Her dad went to check and saw 2 naked, injured women and let them in and called 911. They had been abducted from St. Louis City, about 40 miles away, by 2 men and brought to this old abandoned farmhouse where they tortured and assaulted them. The two women somehow managed to get free and ran to the only light they could see, the light above my friend's garage. They survived, but the men were never caught. There were evidence that the men had been going there for a while. My friend was convinced they put the batteries in the road to lure me out of the car. I'm just really glad my gut told me not to. Wow, that is creepy. Another roadblock. I live in rural Connecticut, and my mom was driving me down dark, twisty roads to my friend's house, and in the middle of the road was caution yellow tape. Not police line do not cross tape, but just tape that said caution, blocking the whole road. It had clearly been ripped and tied back together in some places. My mom examined it, gunned it in reverse, and got out of there fast. That same night, a woman had gotten out to examine it and gotten back in the car to call the police because she found it suspicious, but not suspicious enough to leave before calling 911. She was grabbed out of her car, but the people who grabbed her didn't know that she had been calling 911, and the police rolled up as the car was driving away with her in the trunk. They chased them down, and she lived, but it was scary. Trust your gut with roadblocks. The guy in the elevator. I get really bad vibes from the car park at work. It's giant, poorly lit, multi-story, and I've seen enough horror films to know I shouldn't take it lightly. I get bad vibes from car parks too. Whenever I get in, I pay attention to the floors people call the lift to keep an eye on where they're going. One time, a guy got out in front of me and pressed 6 while I was parked slow 18-wheeler and getting a feeling I needed to move. As we came up to a red light, I switched over a lane so I wouldn't be behind him anymore. About a second later, I heard something that sounded like an explosion, which was a tow truck slamming into the back of the 18-wheeler at about 70 miles an hour, tore off the 2 rear axles, and most certainly would have smashed my car to pieces. Wow. Slow Down is the title of the next. When I was around 18, I was on a back road with some friends, and a girl I didn't know was driving really fast. Now, I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and I've always enjoyed a calculated risk in the name of a good time. But on this occasion, I told her to either slow the F down or let me out. I literally had to start screaming at her before she listened and slowed down. A week later, she crashed on that same stretch of road at 90 miles an hour, killing her and the 3 passengers of her car. Fast cars. My boyfriend's X Rebound did this to her. Okay. What? X's Rebound. Okay. He had a fast little car, and they were cruising one day, and he started laughing. She asked, "What?" He jammed on the gas and started whipping along a mountain while she screamed for him to stop, clawing at the door, hysterically freaking out as the car skidded along the road, inches from 100+ foot drops. She told my boyfriend about it, and he did what I believe to be the right thing and told her family. They dated for like 4 years, so he knew them, and they knew that he didn't lie. They banned her from seeing him and reinforced it. He ended up killing himself doing the same thing in the rain. I don't know how that meant that her gut warned her of anything. Whatever. Leave Now is the next title. My now wife and I did the long distance thing in college, and I planned on doing my normal routine to visit her. Leave Chicago in the morning, get to her early afternoon on Friday. I'm closing my store on Thursday night, and I get a feeling I should leave that night. So I said, F it, and I left that night. A little after lunch on Friday, tornado sirens go off. I don't think anything of it until I head back home on Sunday, and I drive through a town about a half hour north of her. It got lit up by a tornado. I quickly realized that if I had left at my normal time, I would have been smack dab in the middle of that tornado. Tornadoes freak me out. The next one is titled, I Just Didn't Like Him. My ex-husband had a friend I didn't like, although I could never explain why. He's very handsome, always smiling, very respectful speech, always called me ma'am or miss, even though he's a few years older. And my ex used to give me crap for expressing my feelings about this guy. Now, I was never rude, but I did have trouble hiding my creeped out vibe. Fast forward 3 years later, this guy is convicted of indecent liberties and statutory rape of his girlfriend's daughters, a 12-year-old and 14-year-old female. Man, sometimes you just know people creep you out. They just do. Awful vibe. I remember meeting the dad of a student, and I got an awful vibe off of him. People always talked about how nice he was and how in love with him, how in love he and his wife were. I always thought she really loved him, but he's just not right. Found out years later he'd been assaulting his older daughter every time his wife was away. Creep. Go to the doctor. I had a pain in my lungs when I inhaled. I've never been stabbed, don't know what it's like, but the pain should have been equal to it, if not worse. It happened before, years ago. those two guys. The next day, the news was talking about a bar fight. Apparently, the guy who got up went home, grabbed a gun, and came back for a drive-by. He killed 4 people in the process. Oh my gosh. My grandpa taught me to never ignore my gut, and I couldn't be happier to have listened. So true. My cat smelled cancer. Felt hinky about one of my many growing skin spots. Took 6 doctor visits asking they look at it, all saying it's nothing, don't worry. But the cat sniffing the spot continuously made me worry. Took this evidence to a new doctor. On the day a dermatologist happened to be visited, my doctor laughed it off like all the others, but said the dermatologist might be interested in the weird shape. Dermatologist took one look, sniffed it, and said get a biopsy right now. Biopsy showed aggressive subdural cancer. Under the skin, the spot was the iceberg tip. Got a big lump of me cut out just in time. I'm gonna take a moment here. I work for a dermatologist. If it makes you nervous, go get it checked. We would rather check you 1,000 times for nothing than not check you and you have a cancer. Get your skin checks every year. Just do it. Rant over. Next article. Mother's intuition. My mom knew something was wrong with me when I was younger. Doctors did not want to see me for another 2 weeks. Mom went into a blind rage over the phone, telling them that she was taking me to get checked, whether they liked it or not. We go to the GP. He puts a stethoscope on my back and smells my breath, and then says we need to get him to the hospital now. Turns out I have type 1 diabetes, and if I'd waited another day, I would have died. See, moms just know. Mom's intuition, man. I felt like I was being watched. I was at the county fair when I was younger, 8 or 9, wandered off from my parents, and I had this odd feeling I was being watched, but I ignored it for some reason. This man had followed me up and down the walkways of the expo hall we were standing in. As he started to get closer, I got this overwhelming feeling of fright. I called for my dad, and I could tell it startled him. He promptly turned and changed direction from me. A real quick thing, but it stuck with me all these years. Left behind. It didn't happen to me, but was told to me by my mom. When she was pregnant with my older sister, her and her family decided to go hiking in the mountains. On the day of the hike, she suddenly felt discomfort and uncomfortable, so she stayed behind while the rest of her family went for the hike. Her family got lost, and if it wasn't for my mom staying behind, they would not have gotten help. Keep in mind, there were no cell phones back then, so if you got lost, it was a lot harder to contact rescue to come find you. Don't Go is the next title. I had just was funneling everyone off the freeway to the right side exit. And I had the strongest feeling that we needed to move to the left for this lane, so I did. No more than a minute after I moved over, a garbage truck came barreling down the freeway, crashed into the car in front of us in the other lane so fast that it lifted the front end of the truck and it landed on top of the car. We were in a tiny sports car that would have crumpled like a tin can under the weight of the garbage truck and definitely would have killed me and my mom in a second. I can't imagine watching something like that and knowing it could have been you. Rear view mirror. A few years ago, I was stopped at a red light around 3 a.m. I had just picked up my boyfriend from downtown. I had a sudden urge to look in my rearview mirror, and thank goodness I did, because in it I saw an SUV speeding and wasn't slowing down. I ended up halfway in the intersection to get out of the way. We would have both died from the impact. Missed my bus is the next one. Went to go catch the bus, saw the bus about to pull out from the stop, and I could have made it if I ran, but something told me not to catch it and to just wait for the next one, so I did. Caught the next bus a half hour later. Now, usually I sit in the back of the bus on the driver's side, so that's where I sat. A little way into the journey, traffic was slowing, and we got to the cause of it. A lorry had crashed into the bus I had missed, right into the back on the driver's side. Had I caught that bus, I wouldn't be here. It still gives me chills after 6 years. The next one is titled, I Slept on the Couch. I was like 8 or 9 when my parents took me and my younger brother to stay the night at my paternal grandparents because they were in the middle of divorcing. They lived in a farmhouse that was connected to a barn with machinery and gasoline tanks, and hay on the ground floor, and furnished rooms on the floor above that. The room we were supposed to stay in was in that barn. As soon as we went into the guest room, I was overwhelmed with panic, and I felt really dizzy. I turned around and said, "We will not sleep in that room," and we spent the night on the couch in the living room instead. Later that night, a gas leak in the barn ignited, and almost the entire barn, including the guest rooms on the top floor, exploded. Maybe I had that weird feeling because the gas had leaked into the room already, but I'm sure I would be dead if I hadn't noticed it. Wow. Late for Work is the title of the next one. About 10 years ago, I had a job that started at 6 a.m. on the weekends. I didn't drive, and I would take the light rail, which was a 15-minute walk from the house I rented. One dark morning, I saw a person up ahead of me a few blocks away. I usually see homeless people on my walk to the light rail, and most are harmless, just trying to collect cans for the deposit and asking for change. But this guy just felt off. I could tell from blocks away there was something wrong about him. So I crossed the street. I grabbed my phone from my backpack because I still had to go to work, and this road was the only way to the light rail. And suddenly, I hear this strange noise that they typed it like a bump. I look over, and it was him with his private parts in his hand. Oh my gosh, that sound was the sound of his shoes hitting the pavement as he ran towards me. I took off running, and I screamed, "I'm calling 911," and I held my phone to my ear. He must have saw it and took it seriously because he ran the opposite direction. They wanted me to wait there for the cop, and I was like, no. I said I didn't want to be late for work, but I was also terrified of him finding me. But I will never forget the sound of his shoes hitting the pavement. Oh my gosh. Cross the Road is the next one. It was about 2 years ago, and I was walking down a main road. I don't know why, but something told me I needed to cross. I wasn't even going that way, but I felt like I had to cross. It was quiet, so I quickly ran across the road. Just as I got to the other side, a drunk driver came down the road and hit a light pole where I had just been. Had I not crossed, I would have been killed on impact. Gut reaction. I was driving across the country last summer and was behind a guy, and something didn't feel right. He wasn't doing anything crazy, but the way he was driving felt off. Slowing down randomly, speeding up, wobbling around in his lane, occasionally grazing the shoulder. It's a 2-lane highway, so I'm torn about passing him because what if he cuts me off or something while I'm doing it? And I know I don't want him behind me, but I don't want to be anywhere near him, so passing him and speeding off just seems like the okay option. I see an exit sign, so I decide I'll wait it out until then, get gas, and hopefully never see him again. The guy swerves into the left lane, into the grass, across the opening of the highway, and off into the field. Dude is still driving through this field as I'm passing. I have no idea what this was about, but he would have run into me as I was passing him if I had gone. Everything's about cars, my goodness. Stay away from vans is the next one. Escape the abduction of me and my friends thanks to my gut feeling. I was at the mall with my friends, all of us around 12. It was 8 and my mom was on her way to pick me up. We were all chilling together until each of our parents got here to get us. As we're standing outside of the door near one of the side entrances, a man comes up to us. He's about 30 with huge glasses and a clipboard. And he says, "Hey guys, do you want to watch some movie trailers and answer surveys? I'll pay you each $5 per trailer." Naturally, my friends are all for it. The thing is, my heart dropped as soon as I heard it. They're all saying yes, and the man nods and points to the side entrance. It's pitch black outside, and that entrance leads to the back parking lot of the mall, which is always deserted. And he says, "We can do it over there." My friends start to follow the man as he walks toward the glass doors, and I'm trailing behind them. As we get close enough for me to kind of see what's outside, I notice a van parked right outside the entrance. The headlights are on, the car is running, and the back door seems to be open. Every part of my being screams, "No, don't go." I stop in my tracks and loudly say, "Guys, my mom is here to pick us up. I don't think we have time for it." The man freezes and keeps his eyes trained on the door. I see that his jaw is clenching tightly. My friends look at me with confusion, and I try to give them the most terrified expression of warning that I can. Thankfully, they get the message and they say bye to the guy. The man refused to look at us and simply began to walk outside of the mall. As we're walking away, I turn to look behind me one last time, and the van and the man were gone. I'm going to read one more. I'm not sure how many more are in the article, but my throat's getting a little tired. The next one is called Earthquake. I think I was about 10 or 11, and I was reorganizing my room, moving books and stuff around. I'd been working on it all day, and during the process, I moved a bookshelf on top of a dresser to give me more space, and loaded it up with 2 encyclopedia sets and a bunch of other books. I ended up moving my bed parallel to the dresser and passed out from working on my room all day. I woke up a little after 4, and I was contemplating getting a glass of water and moving my bed because it didn't look safe under the bookshelf. I finally get out of my bed, walk towards the door, maybe 2 or 3 steps, and boom, 1994 Northridge earthquake hit. The bookshelf instantly fell on my bed. I don't know if it would have killed me, but it would have really smashed me up. Oh my goodness. Oh, there's only one more. I'll read it. Of course, it's long. The last one is titled, "Hey guys." I used to date a girl I would go see every night after I got off work. I worked till midnight, and I would stay at her house until 1 or 2 a.m. Sometimes as I left, she would follow me in her car and stop at a nearby all-night grocery store. I always begged her not to, but she said she'd be fine. Sometimes I would wait in the parking lot until she came back out, and then we'd go our separate ways, and sometimes I wouldn't. One time I felt ill, so as we left, she said, "Just go home, I'll be fine. I always am." But for some reason, I felt like that's the night I needed to be there. She thought I went home, but I was in the parking lot as she pulled in, just be safe, guys. Don't go to the supermarket in the middle of the night all by yourself. I understand that maybe that's your situation, or you know, but just be aware of your surroundings. I'm gonna tell you one story about I'm gonna tell you two stories about times where my intuition has saved me or someone else. I was riding in the car with my high school boyfriend, and we were behind this truck, and it had like this dining room set in the back of it. And he still likes to tell me this story. I totally forgot about it, but I was like, hey, you need to get over. And he was like, what? No. And I was like, no, yeah, you need to get over in this other lane. And literally, as soon as we did, one of those chairs came flying out of the back of the truck and would have hit us. Now, it was just a dining room chair, but it could have made us swerve into something else. It might have gone through the windshield if we were close enough. I don't know. But he never lets me forget that. And the next one, I was taking a nap, I guess. I usually don't dream during my naps, but I had this really weird dream about my Aunt PJ passing away. This was before she passed away, but I got up and my mom was in the kitchen and she was crying, and I was like, Mom, wait, what's wrong? And she was like, your Aunt P. And I was like, no. And she was like, it's okay, she's just in the hospital. And I was like, whew, okay, no more prophetic dreams for me. I do that sometimes where I have these really weird dreams and then they come true in some way, and I don't like it. My mom has that kind of psychic mommy intuition, and I kind of point it out at her sometimes. Now, being a very staunch Jehovah's Witness, she doesn't believe in anything witchy woo-woo is the term that she uses. But she can predict things sometimes like that, you know, get in the other lane or whatever. I think everyone has the power of gut intuition, which is why I wanted to read you this article. I would love to hear from your examples down below if this has happened to you. I know it's not exactly